Hello and welcome to another New Catholic Generation trailer review. I'm David from Catholic Contrast, joined by Ned from Parables of the Film Industry, Renee from Reborn Pure, and Joseph from The Catholic Apologist. So this time, we've gotten a couple requests from people to review the trailer for the upcoming film, The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. So have any of you guys ever heard of this movie, or this book, perhaps, that it was based off of?
Well, I think we all heard of the book.
Well,
I've actually never heard the book, actually. Wait, wasn't in the God's Not Dead? Yeah, it was in God's Not Dead.
It was in God's Not Dead, yeah. Yeah, and
They
the scene
had
in
the
God's
author.
Not Dead, too, they're questioning the historicity of Jesus, and he's one of the experts they bring in.
yes. That's all I know. That is all I know.
Of course they're making a movie out of this.
They're making a movie out of everything.
If somebody wanted to do an investigation to Christianity, where would you start?
Hey, was that a Catholic church?
Yeah.
Resurrection.
Yeah, where would you start?
Yeah.
That is where we would start.
I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to pull the trigger. I've spent my entire career as a journalist uncovering the truth. Until the day my wife presented me with the biggest story of my life.
I'm not going to lose my wife and my kids to something that I can't even reason with.
And what happened next changed me forever.
How can
Oh.
we even talk
Oh,
about
no.
historical
Triggered.
evidence for the resurrection?
The Gospels are filled with contradiction. The empty tomb is based on evidence. And isn't evidence your trade? We all bet our lives on something. The question is, what's it going to be?
As much as I would like to help out a fellow skeptic, what you're proposing is impossible.
Could Jesus survive being spiked to the cross?
There is no evidence of anyone ever surviving a full Roman crucifixion.
Just because I write something down and I bury in the dirt, that doesn't make it true.
But I felt
think that was a
something
Catholic
more
priest,
real
yeah.
than anything I've ever felt in my life.
I'm praying for you.
Do you really want to know the truth, or is your mind already made up? Stop blaming me, and the church, and God, and do your job.
No one's ever proven if the shroud is the actual burial cloth of the Christ. But whenever someone looks in those eyes for the first time, suddenly becomes a real person.
Guys, that was a lot of Christian relativity, like Catholicism, Protestantism, and it just like mixed them all together into like the same thing. I wonder what religion this guy actually is.
Well, I mean, it's being made by PureFlix, so I assume that it's just some kind of Christian denomination, but also trying to appease the Catholics to get them to watch it.
I mean,
don't know,
because
that's my guess.
the Catholics have so much history, and if he's talking about the history, the case for Christ
Right.
existing, who kind of
We're
brought
kinda all
that
over the
history
place.
to now. We brought that history to now.
Yeah, so the original book it's based off of is the story of Lee Strobel, who initially was an atheist, had a wife who was also an atheist. After they got married, his wife met a friend who challenged her on her beliefs, then invited her to church and ended up converting her to Christianity. And then he was very angry about this initially. He felt like there would be a conflict in their worldviews, and he was thinking about divorcing her. But he also saw that, he says in his book, that she changed, he saw, for the better. Essentially, he saw that her personality, her outlook on life, her just cheerfulness, her attitude had transformed in such an appealing way that he had to investigate further. And so he set out, he is a journalist from the Chicago Tribune. He wanted to research the case of Christ's resurrection to see if he could prove or disprove it. If he could disprove it, then he would present the evidence to his wife. If he found the evidence going the other way, then he would agree with her. So the book chronicles him interviewing a dozen or so different experts from various areas of biblical archaeology, New Testament studies, other relevant fields. And it's him asking all these skeptical questions and then giving responses.
Yeah, I kind of want to read the book. Just to see what all those specialists and doctors said. And things like I see him interviewing them in the movie as well, so that could be just as interesting if it's well done. The actors look good so far.
Yeah, it's interesting. The lead actor, Mike Vogel, he was originally a model. He did a lot of Levi's modeling back in the day. But he was also in some movies. He was in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He played Andy.
Hey, you gotta start somewhere in Hollywood. It always comes down to horror movies.
Seems like a lot of people started in those.
They do.
And then he landed the lead role in this film.
All right.
Interestingly, I was curious at first that Pureflix was making a sort of narrative film about this because this book is not a narrative. It only very briefly describes his life before. And a lot of the details I was describing about his personal history, I didn't even get from the book. I got from watching an interview with him talking about this new movie. And so, yeah, the essence of this book is just the interview. So I was thinking about this, well, if you're going to make a movie of that, why not just make a documentary, essentially, interviewing the real people?
I love documentaries.
So it's basically kind of like a biopic of this guy.
It's a biopic, yeah.
Okay.
Although I did also discover that they actually did already make a documentary version back in 2007 with interviewing all the guys and having them basically make a movie version of the documentary version of the book. So I'm curious as to what they would do with making a biopic, essentially. This book is very dense. There's so many different subjects that he covers, and there's so much evidence. This really only scratches the surface in a lot of areas. So I'm wondering how you would be able to portray that sort of thing properly in a film. Like you have to gloss over so much stuff so fast.
Right. That's kind of one thing I'm curious about too. I mean, because like even if you look at the Catholic Church, we have the Summa that's like, you have church documents and councils and thousands of writings everywhere because even one subject can take so much to thoroughly explain so that there's no doubt about a certain belief or doctrine or whatever. So, with something like this, even if it's a book like as thick as that is, you're not going to be able to go over everything. That's obvious. But how thoroughly you go through it and how much you balance that with since this is a movie, you're going to want to put more emotion in it, but are you going to put too much emotion? That's kind of one of the things that I'm worried about for watching is just like, is it going to be too emotional to the point where they ignore parts that could have driven home certain points and not that you shouldn't have emotion.
No.
Just being careful with how much you do it and not having it where it just kind of seems like, oh, well, this kind of has to be true. Well, why? Well, this kind of has to be true. Just like this emotional, oh, yes, it must be true.
Yeah, going off...
That last scene in the trailer is kind of like gave a little bit of extra to my worry.
Yeah, going off of what you're saying about making like this story a little bit too emotional is the trailer itself. It was way too epic.
Well, they had the extremely dramatic music.
Yeah, that music was like, I'm just like, what? Yeah. This is stuff that should be coming out of a Lord of the Rings trailer. Not this.
He's going up the staircase. Not
He's arguing with his wife. He throws the vase into the coffee table.
Exactly. I don't mean to make fun of that at all because I'm sure the true story is intense. But when you're making a movie trailer that's based off of something like this, if you can't make it this melodramatic. You cannot make it a biopic melodramatic because then you will not take the actual story seriously. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and address the main problem I have. From the creators of God's Not Dead.
Here we go again.
Okay, actually, in a little bit of fairness. So, I'm a little bit interested in seeing this movie, Pureflix, you finally got me. I'm a little bit interested in seeing one of your movies.
Same here.
I'm a little bit interested. You got me. And then there's Renee.
Sorry.
So the reason why I'm interested is because I do actually like movies that kind of delve into the history of Jesus Christ and stuff like that. Obviously, this is not about the history of Jesus Christ. It's about the man who delved into the history of Jesus Christ and how he found his faith. In that regard, I'm actually very interested because it's an atheist who comes from the background of like, okay, I'm always not agreed with Christianity and stuff like that. Now he has to go on a mission to try and prove or disprove the story of Jesus Christ and stuff like that. In that regard, I'm actually a little bit interested. But yeah, the problem I have with most of these Pureflix movies is that they are over dramatic and they do not rely on the sole aspect of like, here's the facts, here's the story, here's the stuff.
Here's reality.
Here's reality,
Really
for
are.
God's sake. That's what I basically have to say about the movie. I'm very interested, which is more than I can say for any trailer that PureFlix has given me so far. But I am also very worried because, once again, it's PureFlix, and I'm sorry, guys, it's very hard for me to take your movie seriously. So
yeah, one thing I did want to comment on is that as far as the cinematography goes, I actually thought the cinematography looked really good.
It did look good.
Which he's doing all the most mundane stuff. He's typing on his typewriter. He's just reading books. He's talking to someone. But they shot it in a very dynamic way.
But you see, that's what makes a good biopic. You have to have amazing cinematography in order to make a story that seems as simplistic as a man who's just going on a quote-unquote mundane journey to go ahead and prove something, and you have to try and make the cinematography look epic, which is one reason, with the cinematography. Music, you took a little bit too far, but I can see what they were trying to go for in the trailer, and possibly even in the movie, because most biopics have to be like that.
And honestly, to give them a little bit of credit, I mean, because normally when you see that kind of music and that cinematography, there's things blowing up and people running and jumping.
Exactly,
maybe what they're trying to do is kind of portray with the music the racing and the blowing up of stuff that's going on inside the mind of him trying to go through all this. So maybe that's what they were trying to portray. Yeah, possibly. But
they also did a great job setting the mood. I know this was actually a trailer where I noticed the color grading. They graded it like it was the 70s. The color palette is definitely
I did really like that.
And then they also have his glorious hair and stash, which just reminds me of Julian Smith's car phone video.
That was glorious.
No, it seems like the movies we've liked recently are portraying real life stories of Christians or people that are well done, of course. I'm Not Ashamed.
Yes.
Was way more realistic to a Christian girl's life, except for the ending. And then this one seems more realistic to the atheist's journey to Christ, as opposed to I don't know. I still don't like the main guy from Resurrection of Gavin Stone. And the director already knows that, so he's okay.
Well, he's not being deceptive in this one.
No, he's not. Yeah, this guy's he's somebody you didn't encounter anywhere.
So, and then also a reminder to our audience, the purpose of these trailer reviews is to mainly analyze the trailer as a piece of marketing as to whether it would make us actually want to watch the movie. So, Joe, did the trailer make you want to watch the movie?
It made me curious to go and watch it, yeah. I mean, again, I'm not... It still makes me nervous, especially because of the last scene, to go and see it. But it does make me curious enough to want to go and see how they do it.
Renee, would you want to go see this film?
I actually really want to see this film. Yeah. I want to see a Protestant go up to the Shroud of Turin and ask a priest all these questions. Not even a Protestant, I'm sorry, an atheist who's discovering all this for the first time. It's like atheist reacts to Catholic history. It's like, I want to see that.
I am curious to see it only because it does look like a legitimately very interesting movie, and it looks like even a very well-made movie, too. And in that regard, I'm also very interested. So... yeah.
Don't want to see it because PureFlix.
Yeah, and creators of God's Not Dead. Anyway,
God's Not Dead. All right.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see it. Yeah, I'd be interested to see it mainly to see what they did differently from their documentary version of the book that they made, because it's not a book that's a narrative story; it's a series of interviews. So I want to see how did they add upon it to create a sort of movie structure about his life. However, regardless of what we all thought about it, we will be going to see this movie, as we will be doing a review for NCG. So we hope to see you then.
Yes.
When we do review it.
Thank you so much for watching New Catholic Generation, and we'll get back to you after we see the film.